Maxine Waters entered the precinct of the House Oversight Committee with the unmistakable air of a proprietor, a demeanor forged through 32 years within the legislative halls of Congress, possessing the aura of a former chair of the Financial Services Committee who had caused presidents to hesitate and colleagues to retreat in deference. She had outlasted multiple administrations, survived numerous scandals, and neutralized adversaries using nothing more than the sheer force of her voice and her indomitable will. Her Chanel suit commanded a price tag, $4,000 higher than what the vast majority of her constituents earned in an entire month. The diamond earrings she wore caught the ambient light with every dismissive turn of her head. Her hair was styled to perfection, and her makeup was applied with flawless precision, indicating that she had dressed for a battle. Or perhaps she had dressed to remind every person present that she existed entirely above the fray of this particular conflict. She remained blissfully unaware that her daughter had been cooperating with federal investigators for the preceding 4 months. She did not know that the electronic mails she believed had been permanently deleted had been successfully recovered from backup servers. She did not know that by the conclusion of this day, the political empire she had spent 3 arduous decades constructing would collapse around her like a fragile house of cards caught in the midst of a hurricane. Maxine Waters settled into the witness chair with the bearing of a queen, tolerating a tedious audience with the peasantry, casting her gaze upon the committee members, the Republicans she openly despised, and the Democrats who feared her, feeling nothing but a profound sense of contempt. Dan Bongino sat at the designated investigator's table with a stack of folders arranged before him. A former Secret Service agent and former NYPD officer, a working-class individual from Queens who had dedicated his professional career to protecting presidents and apprehending criminals. Waters looked at him and perceived a non-entity, a failed law enforcement officer turned podcast host, a man who, in her estimation, had never accomplished anything worthy of her respect. However, she was profoundly wrong about that assessment as well. "Let me be clear," Waters stated firmly, before anyone else could utter a syllable, her voice filling the chamber with the practiced authority of 3 decades. "I am here under protest. This committee possesses no legitimate authority to question a sitting member of Congress regarding legally protected political activities." Bongino had not yet spoken a word. He was merely observing her, waiting with patience. "I have served this country for 32 years. 32 years fighting for civil rights, for economic justice, for the poor and forgotten people that Washington ignores, and I will not be lectured by a failed Secret Service agent who could not succeed in real law enforcement," she declared, adjusting her designer glasses and looking at him with open, undisguised contempt. "I have faced down racists. I have faced down Republicans. I have faced down presidents. Do you truly believe I am afraid of you?" She laughed, and it was not a pleasant sound, asking, "Now, are we done with this little show? I have actual work to do. Reclaiming my time." The chamber waited in silence. Bongino still had not spoken, sitting perfectly still with his hands folded, watching her performance with the patience of a man who had spent years protecting presidents from threats far more dangerous than an arrogant congresswoman. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, almost gentle, asking, "Are you finished, Congresswoman?" She replied, "I am finished when I say I am finished. Reclaiming my—" "No," the word cut through the chamber like a sharpened blade. "You do not get to reclaim anything today, Congresswoman. Not your time, not your reputation, not your legacy," he said, opening the first folder, "because everything you have reclaimed for 32 years, every dollar, every favor, every ounce of trust your constituents placed in you belonged to someone else." He held up a document, stating, "And today, they are taking it back." He let the words settle in the air before continuing, $1.2 million. That is how much your campaign has paid to your daughter, Karen, over the course of your career for Slate Mailer Services." And he set the document down, adding, "Your daughter, your campaign money, your family's bank account, exposed right here in black and white." Waters' eyes flickered just for a fleeting moment, a visible crack in the armor, as he continued, "And Congresswoman, that is just the beginning. We have not even gotten to the mansion yet, or the bank bailout, or the $12 million your husband's company received because of your phone calls." He smiled, and it was not a friendly smile, saying, "So please, tell me again about reclaiming your time. I want to hear all about it." Bongino arranged his documents with methodical precision, ensuring every page was tabbed, every exhibit numbered, and every argument prepared for the woman who thought she could talk her way out of any situation. "Let us start with something simple, Congresswoman. Let us talk about your daughter, Karen," he began. Waters' expression hardened as she retorted, "My daughter runs a legitimate business that provides services to multiple political campaigns. $1.2 million. Bongino let the number hang heavily in the air. "That is the total amount your campaigns and affiliated committees have paid to Karen Waters over your congressional career. $1.2 million for slate mailer services." He pulled out payment records spanning 2 decades and said, "Now, for viewers at home who might not know what a slate mailer is, let me explain. It is a piece of paper, a list of candidates that a voter might want to support. You print it, you mail it, people throw it in the trash. Very simple, very cheap." He held up an example, stating, "This is a slate mailer. 1 piece of paper, 2-color printing, basic design. The going rate for producing and mailing these, according to industry standards, is approximately $2 to $3 per piece for a standard campaign run." He pulled out Karen Waters' invoices and noted, "Your daughter charges approximately $15 to $20 per piece, 5 to 10 times the market rate for the exact same product." Waters leaned forward aggressively, insisting, "My daughter provides premium services, targeted outreach, strategic premium services." Bongino nodded slowly, saying, "Let us examine those premium services." He pulled out corporate records, stating, "Karen Waters' company, Progressive Connections. I looked into it, investigated the corporate filings, the business licenses, the employee records." He spread the documents out, listing number of full-time employees other than Karen Waters, 0, office location, her home address, business equipment, a computer, and a printer, premium services delivered by one woman working from her living room, charging 10 times what professional firms charge. He looked directly at Waters and said, "That is not a business, Congresswoman. That is a money laundering operation with a fancy name." "How dare you?" Waters slammed her hand on the table. "My daughter has built a successful—" "Let me tell you what a real campaign consulting firm looks like," Bongino interrupted, pulling out documentation from legitimate political operations. "A real firm has staff, account managers, designers, data analysts. They have offices with overhead costs. They have equipment and software licenses. They have client diversification, serving multiple campaigns across different races." He held up Karen Waters' business registration, saying, "Your daughter's company has none of that. 1 employee herself, 1 client you, 1 product overpriced pieces of paper. This is not a consulting firm. It is a direct pipeline from your campaign account to your family's pockets." He pulled out more payment records, saying, "Let us look at the timing of these payments. Every single major payment to Karen coincides with a significant expense in her personal life. March 2017. Karen buys a new car. April 2017. Your campaign pays her $92,000 for enhanced voter outreach services." He produced another document. September 2019. Karen puts a down payment on a vacation property in Palm Springs. October 2019. Your campaign pays her $115,000 for digital engagement consulting. He spread the timeline out, observing, "It is like clockwork. Karen needs money. The campaign suddenly needs services. The invoices appear, the payments flow, and the money lands in Karen's accounts just in time." He looked at the committee members and stated, "This is not campaign spending. It is an allowance, a very generous allowance paid by people who thought they were supporting a political cause." "Let us see how successful," Bongino said, pulling out comparison data. I researched what other campaigns pay for identical services, exposed right here. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee pays $3.40 per piece. The California Democratic Party pays $2.90 per piece. Senator Feinstein's campaign pays $3.20 per piece. He set the comparisons down. Karen Waters, $18.50 per piece, 500% more than the party itself. Charges for the same piece of paper, the same printing, the same postage. He looked at the committee members and declared, "There is a word for paying family members grossly inflated rates for services that could be obtained elsewhere for a fraction of the cost. The word is fraud." Waters' voice rose to a near shout. "Reclaiming my time. I will not sit here and listen to. You will listen today, Congresswoman. For once in 32 years, someone else gets to talk." Bongino pulled out a new document. "Let us look at the payment timeline. Every election cycle, like clockwork, payments to Karen Waters increase. 2016, $85,000. 2018, $112,000. 2020, $145,000. 2022, $168,000. He traced the upward line on the chart. "Your campaign spending goes up every cycle, and somehow Karen's slice of the pie always gets bigger. What a remarkable coincidence." He pulled out an email printout saying, "This is from your campaign manager to your finance director, dated March 15th, 2018. Let me read it." He read slowly, making sure every word was captured. "MW says to increase Karen's payment for this cycle. She needs the money for the house renovation. Add another $50,000 to the mailer budget and code it as expanded outreach." He set the email down. "House renovation. Your daughter's house paid for by your donors. The teachers and nurses and working people who gave you $25 because they believed you were fighting for them." He pulled out another document. "Let me tell you about one of those donors. Rosa Martinez, domestic worker, lives in your district, cleans houses in Hancock Park for $15 an hour." A photograph appeared on the screen showing an elderly Latina woman with tired eyes and working hands. "Rosa donated $25 a month to your campaign for 6 years. That is $1,800 total. Money she could have used for medicine, for groceries, for her grandchildren." Bongino did the math out loud. "You know what $1,800 buys from Karen Waters' company? About 100 pieces of paper, 100 pieces of junk mail that went straight in the trash." He looked at Waters and said, "Rosa skipped meals to donate to you, and you funneled her money to your daughter's fake business to pay for house renovations. That is not public service, Congresswoman. That is theft." Waters' composure was cracking as she insisted, "The payments to my daughter are completely legal. Legal and ethical are two different things. Legal and right are two different things. You have spent 32 years exploiting the gap between what is legal and what is decent." He closed that section of the folder. "But your daughter is not the only family member who has gotten rich off your position. Let us talk about your husband. Let us talk about the bank. And let us talk about $12 million of taxpayer money." Bongino opened a new section of his folder, this one containing property records, photographs, and financial documents. "Before we get to the bank bailout, I want to paint a picture for everyone watching, because understanding where you live helps us understand who you really are." He pulled out a photograph. "This is your home, Congresswoman. Windsor Boulevard, Hancock Park, Los Angeles. 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, swimming pool, 3-car garage, manicured lawn, maintained by professional landscapers. Current estimated value $6.1 million. The image appeared on the chamber's screens, showing a sprawling mansion with palm trees and luxury cars in the driveway. Beautiful home. The kind of home most Americans can only dream about. The kind of home that says, "You have really made it." He pulled out a map. "There is just one problem. This home is not in your congressional district." He pointed to the boundaries clearly marked on the map. "California's 43rd Congressional District. Watts, Willowbrook, parts of South Los Angeles, Some of the poorest neighborhoods in the entire state. Median household income $44,000. Median home value $280,000. He traced the district boundaries. And here, miles away, is Hancock Park. Median household income $153,000. Median home value $2.8 million. Not part of your district, not even close. He set the map down. You represent some of the poorest people in California. You live among some of the richest. That is quite a commute, Congresswoman, both geographically and morally. Waters shifted in her chair, stating, "Members of Congress are only required to maintain a residence in their district. Where I choose to live primarily is my personal. Your personal business? Of course. Let us look at that district residence you maintain." He pulled out more photographs. This is the address listed as your official district residence. A small house on West 80th Street. Assessed value approximately $400,000. The contrast with the mansion was stark. We investigated this property, spoke to neighbors, pulled utility records. You know what we found? He held up the utility bills. Average monthly electricity usage at your district address, 47 kilowatt hours. You know what that means? That means nobody lives there, he explained. A typical household uses about 900 kilowatt hours per month. Your residence uses about 5% of that. He set the bills down. The lights come on occasionally, probably when you need to prove you were there, but nobody lives in that house, Congresswoman. It is a prop, a legal fiction, a way to pretend you live among the people you claim to represent. He pulled out more documentation. Meanwhile, your Hancock Park mansion lists you as the primary resident on property tax documents, insurance policies, and every other official record that actually matters. He looked at her with something approaching disgust. Let me paint the full picture. Your constituents live in neighborhoods with bars on their windows. You live in a neighborhood with private security patrols. Your constituents worry about paying rent. You have a swimming pool. Your constituents take the bus. You have a 3-car garage. He pulled out vehicle registration records. Speaking of cars, your primary vehicle, a Mercedes-Benz S-Class sedan. Base price $112,000. That car costs more than 2.5 years of your average constituent's total household income. He pulled out more expense records. Your wardrobe, based on photographs and designer identifications by our fashion consultants. Annual spending estimated at over $60,000. Chanel, Street, John, Oscar de la Renta. The suit you are wearing right now retails for approximately $4,200. He gestured at her outfit. The woman who cleans your house, yes, we interviewed her, makes $15 an hour. It would take her 280 hours of labor to afford what you are wearing today. That is 7 weeks of full-time work for one outfit. He pulled out additional lifestyle documentation regarding her travel expenses. We obtained records through public information requests. In the past 5 years, you have taken 17 trips that included first-class airfare, total cost to your campaign and PACs over $200,000. He showed photographs from social media. Here you are in Paris. Here is the Amalfi Coast. Here is a resort in Cabo San Lucas. All while your constituents struggle to afford bus fare to get to work. He pulled out restaurant receipts obtained through campaign finance disclosures. Dinner expenses charged to your campaign. March 2021, Spago Beverly Hills, $427. April 2021, Nobu Malibu, $563. June 2021, Providence, $612. He calculated the total. In 1 year alone, over $15,000 in fine dining charged to your campaign. Meanwhile, 22% of children in your district qualify for free school lunches because their families cannot afford food. He set the receipts down. You eat at Nobu, they eat at food banks, and it is all paid for by the same donations from the same working people who trusted you. Waters' face had flushed red as she exclaimed, "How I spend my personal money is none of your reality. It is your constituents' business. When you got rich representing them while they stayed poor. 32 years. Congresswoman, You have been in office for 32 years. Let us look at what has changed in that time. He pulled up statistics. 1,991. When you first took office, poverty rate in your district 23%. Your estimated net worth approximately $200,000. He showed the current numbers. 2024. Poverty rate in your district 21%. Basically unchanged. Your estimated net worth over $4 million. He let those numbers sink in. In 32 years, poverty in your district barely budged 2 percentage points, within the margin of error. Essentially the same. But your personal wealth increased 20-fold. He leaned forward. You got rich, Congresswoman. Very rich. And the people you represent? They are still poor, still struggling, still waiting for the change you have been promising for 3 decades. He pulled out a video file. Let me show you something. This is James Wilson, 67 years old, retired janitor, has lived in your district his entire life. The screen showed an elderly black man sitting in a modest living room. She comes around every 2 years asking for votes, James said. Gives nice speeches. Says she is fighting for us. But I have never seen her walk down my street. Never seen her in our grocery store. Never seen her at our church. He shook his head slowly. My neighborhood looks worse now than when she started. Streets are broken. Schools are failing. Kids do not have jobs. And she lives in a mansion on the other side of town. He looked directly at the camera. You cannot fight for people you do not even live near. You cannot understand our problems from a swimming pool. The video ended, and Bongino turned back to Waters. Your constituents know, Congresswoman. They have always known. They just did not have anyone willing to say it out loud. He opened the next section. Now let us talk about how you got so rich. Let us talk about the phone calls, the meetings, and the $12 million that saved your husband's investment. Bongino's voice dropped lower as he opened the next section. This was the heart of the corruption. The clearest case of self-dealing in Maxine Waters' long career. September 2008. The financial crisis. Banks failing across the country. Panic in the markets. The government scrambling to prevent complete economic collapse. He set the historical context. In the middle of this chaos, the Treasury Department receives a call. A special request for a meeting from you, Congresswoman. Specifically about one bank. One United Bank. He pulled out phone logs. This is the Treasury Department's record of that call. September 23, 2008. Caller Representative Maxine Waters. Subject urgent meeting request regarding One United Bank. He looked at her. Now, there were hundreds of banks in trouble. Thousands, maybe. But you did not call about minority-owned banks generally. You did not call about your constituents' access to banking services. You called specifically about One United. He pulled out another document. Let me tell you about your connection to One United Bank. Your husband, Sidney Williams, former United States ambassador, distinguished career. He served on the board of directors of One United Bank. He owned stock in One United Bank, exposed right here in financial disclosure documents. He spread the evidence across the table. So we have a situation. Your husband has a financial interest in a bank. That bank is about to fail. If it fails, your husband loses his board position and his stock becomes worthless. So you pick up the phone and call the Treasury Department. Waters straightened defiantly, asserting, I was advocating for minority-owned financial institutions that were being overlooked in the bailout discussions. Were you? Let us see, Bongino said, pulling out meeting records. The Treasury meeting took place on September 25, 2008. Attendees included officials from One United Bank and representatives from the National Bankers Association, but the discussion focused specifically on One United's need for emergency capital. He held up the meeting notes. Minority banks generally? No. This meeting was about one bank. The bank your husband had money in, the bank that would have failed without government intervention. He pulled out the result. 3 months later, One United Bank received $12 million from the Troubled Asset Relief Program, TARP, taxpayer money, your constituents' money, money that kept the bank alive and protected your husband's investment. He did the math. Sidney Williams's stock in One United was worth approximately $350,000. If the bank had failed, as it would have without the bailout, that stock would have been worth zero. Nothing. Your phone call was worth $350,000 to your family, he stated. Waters' attorney leaned over to whisper something, but she waved him away angrily, saying, "My husband had already resigned from the board when the meeting took place. Let us check that," Bongino replied, pulling out corporate records. Sidney Williams's resignation from the One United board was dated September 26, 2008. The Treasury meeting was on September 25th, one day before. He was still on the board when you arranged the meeting. He set the timeline down, but let us be very clear about what was at stake here. One United Bank was in serious trouble. They had invested heavily in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac securities. When those collapsed, One United was looking at massive losses. Without government intervention, the bank would have failed. Period. He pulled out financial analysis documents. If One United had failed, your husband's stock, worth approximately $350,000, would have been worthless. His board position, which paid him a stipend of about $40,000 annually, would have vanished. Your family stood to lose nearly $400,000. He looked at the committee. So, what did Congresswoman Waters do? She did not file a disclosure. She did not recuse herself from the matter. She picked up the phone and called the Treasury Department directly, used her position as a senior member of the Financial Services Committee to arrange a special meeting for one specific bank, the bank her husband had money in. He pulled out additional phone records. And it was not just one call. We have records of 3 separate calls from your office to Treasury in that 2-week period. 3 calls all about One United, all while your husband sat on their board and held their stock. He spread the call logs out. September 23rd. Initial call requesting the meeting. September 24th. Follow-up call to confirm attendees. September 29th. Call to check on the status of the application. You were not just advocating. You were lobbying hard. But even after he resigned from the board, he still owned the stock. He still had a financial interest, and you still had a conflict of interest that you failed to properly disclose. He pulled out the House Ethics Committee report. Let us see what your own colleagues thought about this. The House Ethics Committee investigation concluded in 2012, after 3 years of delays. He read from the findings. Representative Waters' actions raised significant concerns about the appearance of a conflict of interest. While the committee did not find sufficient evidence to prove that Representative Waters knowingly violated House rules, the committee expressed serious concerns about the failure to adequately disclose the family's financial interest in the matter. He set the report down. Significant concerns, appearance of conflict, serious concerns about disclosure, failures, that is, Washington speak for, you did something wrong, but we are not going to punish you because you are too powerful. He pulled out voting records. The Ethics Committee was deadlocked along party lines, Democrats protecting Democrats. The investigation dragged on for 3 years until people forgot about it, and you walked away without consequences. He looked at her. Until today. He pulled out a new document. This is a phone log notation from Treasury, written by the staffer who received your call. Representative Waters mentioned her husband's involvement with the institution. He read it again slowly. Mentioned her husband's involvement. You told them. Congresswoman, you disclosed the conflict to Treasury. You knew exactly what you were doing, and you did it anyway. Waters was trembling now, with rage or fear. It was hard to tell. Stammering, reclaiming my time. I will not sit here. And $12 million, Bongino interrupted. That is what your phone calls were worth. $12 million of taxpayer money to save a bank that your husband had invested in. He gathered the bank bailout evidence. Your daughter gets over $1 million. Your husband's investment gets protected by $12 million in taxpayer funds. Your net worth grows by millions, while your constituents stay poor. He looked at her with undisguised contempt. This is not public service, Congresswoman. This is a family enrichment scheme. and your congressional seat is just the tool you use to run it. He opened the next section. But it is not just about money, is it? It is also about power, and how you have used that power to intimidate, to threaten, and to incite. Bongino shifted the focus from financial corruption to something equally damaging, Waters' pattern of inflammatory rhetoric. Let us talk about your words, Congresswoman, because words matter, especially words from an elected official, especially words that encourage people to take action. He pulled out a compilation of statements. June 23, 2018. A rally in Los Angeles. You were speaking about the Trump administration's immigration policies. Let me read exactly what you said. He read slowly and clearly. If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out, and you create a crowd, and you push back on them, and you tell them they are not welcome anymore, anywhere. He set the transcript down. Create a crowd. Push back on them. Tell them they are not welcome anywhere. That is what you told your supporters to do to members of the presidential cabinet. Waters shifted in her seat, arguing, I was talking about peaceful protest, the First Amendment. Let us see what happened after your speech, Bongino countered, pulling out news reports. June 22, 2018, one day before your speech, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders is asked to leave a restaurant in Lexington, Virginia. The owner says Sanders' presence was not welcome. He moved to the next report. June 25, 2018, 2 days after your speech, Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen is confronted and shouted out of a Mexican restaurant in Washington, D.C. A crowd gathers, chants force her to leave. Another report. June 26, 2018, Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi is confronted at a movie theater. A crowd surrounds her, shouting, threatening. He set the reports down. Create a crowd? Push back? Not welcome anywhere? They did exactly what you told them to do. Waters' voice hardened as she stated, I never called for violence. Let me read you the dictionary definition of incitement. Bongino said, opening a reference book. Incitement. The action of provoking unlawful behavior or urging someone to behave unlawfully. To stir up, to urge to action, to provoke. He closed the book. You told your supporters to find cabinet members at gas stations, at restaurants with their families, and create crowds. You told them to push back. What exactly did you think would happen? He pulled out more of her statements. Let us look at the pattern. This was not a one-time slip. This is who you are. He began reading. 2017. I am going to take out Trump. Take out. Interesting choice of words. 2018. The cabinet confrontation speech we just discussed. 2019. Trump is the most dishonorable and despicable human being to ever serve in the office of the president. 2020. You lead a crowd chanting, no justice, no peace. Weeks later, cities are burning. 2021. During the Derek Chauvin trial, you travel to Minneapolis and say protesters should get more confrontational if there is no guilty verdict. The judge himself called your comments abhorrent. He set the compilation down. A pattern, Congresswoman. Years of inflammatory rhetoric. Years of encouraging confrontation. Years of stoking anger while you sit safe in your mansion. He pulled out expense records. Speaking of safety, let us talk about protection. He held up security cost documents. You have called for defunding police departments. You have called law enforcement systematically racist. You have demanded fewer cops on streets, less funding for public safety. He pointed to the numbers. Your personal security detail paid for by taxpayers and campaign funds over the past 4 years. $762,000. He let that number sink in. Over $750,000 to keep you safe. Armed security. Trained professionals. 24-hour protection. He looked at her. Police protection for you. Fewer police for your constituents. That is the Maxine Waters philosophy. Safety for me, not for thee. He pulled out one more comparison. January 6, 2021. You voted to impeach President Trump for incitement of insurrection because he told supporters to march peacefully to the Capitol and make their voices heard. He held up the transcript of Trump's speech alongside Waters' 2018 comments. He said, "March peacefully." You said, "Create crowds and push back." He faced impeachment. You faced nothing. He set both transcripts down. The only difference between your incitement and what you accused the president of is that your side did not get charged. But the words, the intent, they are the same, worse actually, because you specifically told people to confront individuals, to push back. Waters was breathing heavily now, the composed facade crumbling, protesting. You cannot compare. I was speaking about peaceful. This is a racist attack on a black woman who reclaiming my time. Bongino's voice thundered through the chamber, throwing her own words back at her. That is what you always say, is it not? Whenever someone holds you accountable, racism, sexism, witch hunt, anything to avoid answering the actual question. He leaned forward. You have been hiding behind those words for 32 years. Today, they do not work anymore. He opened the final major section. And that brings us to the biggest question of all, the one your constituents have been asking for decades. After 32 years, after all the speeches and the promises and the anger, what have you actually done for them? Bongino paused before opening this section. This was the emotional core of the case, the reason everything else mattered. Let us examine your legacy, Congresswoman. 32 years in office, nearly a third of a century representing the same communities. What have you accomplished? He pulled out legislative records. I had my staff compile a comprehensive list of major legislation authored by Maxine Waters that became law and directly benefited her constituents. He held up a thin folder and flipped through the pages. Most were blank or contained minor items. Post offices renamed, congratulatory resolutions, ceremonial proclamations. That is the bulk of it. He set the folder down. In 3 decades, you have renamed buildings and passed resolutions. Your district still does not have a new hospital, still does not have major infrastructure improvements, still does not have job creation programs that actually work. He pulled out her complete legislative history. Let me be specific. In 32 years, the number of major bills authored by Maxine Waters that became law and created jobs in her district, 0. Number of infrastructure projects she secured specifically for her communities, 2 minor street repairs. Number of successful housing initiatives she authored, 0. He contrasted it with other representatives. Congressman Jim Clyburn, representing a similarly challenged district in South Carolina, secured over $3 billion in federal investment for his communities. Congressman Benny Thompson brought hundreds of millions to the Mississippi Delta. These are real numbers, real improvements, real results. He looked at Waters. What did you bring? Speeches, anger, television appearances, and a personal bank account that grew by $4 million. He pulled up economic data. Let me show you something, Congresswoman. 2 sets of numbers. He wrote on a display board. 1,991. Poverty rate in your district, 23%. Unemployment, 11%. Median household income adjusted for inflation, $38,000. He wrote the second set, 2024. Poverty rate, 21%. Unemployment, 9%. Median household income, $44,000. He stepped back. In 32 years, poverty improved by 2 percentage points. Unemployment by 2 points. Income increased by $6,000. That is not progress, Congresswoman. That is statistical noise. That is stagnation. He pulled out comparison data from other districts. Let me show you what real representation looks like. The 3rd Congressional District of Georgia. Similar demographics in the 90s. High poverty, struggling schools, lack of economic opportunity. Over the same 30-year period, poverty dropped by 8 percentage points. Median income increased by over $15,000, adjusted for inflation. He showed another example. Newark, New Jersey, once considered hopeless. Same challenges as your district, but with engaged leadership, with representatives who actually worked on legislation instead of just giving speeches, the city transformed. Poverty down 9 points, crime down significantly, new businesses, new jobs, new hope. He set the comparisons down. It is possible to actually help communities like yours, Congresswoman. Other cities have done it. Other representatives have done it. It just requires caring more about your constituents than your television appearances. He pointed to his earlier notes about her wealth. But your net worth went from $200,000 to $4 million. Your daughter received over $1 million. Your husband's investments were protected by $12 million in taxpayer bailouts. He connected the dots. Your family got rich. Your district stayed poor. 32 years. And that is the legacy. He pulled out a video compilation. Let me show you what your constituents think about that legacy. The screen showed Dorothy Williams, 78 years old, sitting in a small apartment in Watts. I have voted for her every election since 1992, 30 years, and my neighborhood looks worse now than when she started. Her voice cracked. I gave her campaign $20 every month for 15 years. That is $3,600. Money I could have used for medicine, for food, for my grandchildren. And where did it go? To her daughter's fake company. She wiped her eyes. I believed in her. I thought she was fighting for us, but she was just fighting for herself. The video cut to Marcus Johnson, 44, standing on a broken sidewalk in South Los Angeles. My grandmother voted for her. My mother voted for her. I voted for her. 3 generations. And what do we have to show for it? He gestured at the crumbling infrastructure around him. Same broken streets, same failing schools, same empty promises. But her mansion got bigger, her daughter got richer, and we got nothing. The video cut to Patricia Chen, 56, small business owner. I wrote to her office 6 times, asking for help with permits, with regulations, with the bureaucracy that was killing my business. You know what I got back? Form letters. The same form letters 6 times. She shook her head. She does not care about us. We are just votes to her. Just numbers. Just a way to keep her in power so her family can keep getting rich. The video ended, and Bongino let the silence hold for a moment. Those are your constituents, Congresswoman. The people you have claimed to represent for 32 years. The people whose trust you have betrayed. The people whose money you have funneled to your family. He pulled out one more piece of evidence. And here is what you really think of them. He held up an audio file. This recording was made at a private fundraiser in Bel Air, September 2022. A home that costs more than every house on any block in your district combined. The audio played, Waters' voice unmistakable, speaking to wealthy donors. These people in the district, they do not need policy. They do not understand policy. They need someone to be angry for them, someone to yell at the right people. That is what I give them. Anger. Hope is for people who can afford it. Laughter from the donors followed. They will vote for me forever. They do not have anywhere else to go. And as long as I keep fighting the fights they want to see fought, they do not ask questions about results. The recording ended. The chamber was silent. Bongino's voice was quiet now, almost sad. Hope is for people who can afford it. That is what you said about the people you represent. The people who gave you their votes, their trust, their dreams. He looked at her. You have built a career on keeping people poor and angry, Congresswoman, because poor, angry people do not ask questions. They do not demand results. They just need someone to blame, and you have always been happy to give them someone to blame, as long as it is not you. He gathered the evidence. There is a phrase for someone like you, someone who gets rich keeping people poor, someone who profits from suffering while claiming to fight it, someone who exploits the very people they are supposed to serve. He paused. A profiteer of poverty. That is the phrase, and it fits you perfectly. Waters exploded. You do not know anything about my community. You are a white man who has never walked my streets, never seen what my people face. I built that community. I gave them a voice. She was screaming now, all composure gone. the mask completely shattered. Without me, they would have nothing. I have fought for them for 32 years. And you? You think you can come in here, and I will not be. Bongino waited for her to run out of breath. Without you, Congresswoman, they might actually have someone who helps them instead of profits from them. He closed the folder. Without you, they might have a representative who lives among them, instead of in a mansion miles away. Without you, they might have kept the $3,600 Dorothy Williams donated and used it for her own family, instead of funding your daughter's house renovations. He stood up. Your time is up, Congresswoman. 32 years of it, and the people you stole it from are finally taking it back. The chamber had shifted. The energy had changed. Even the Democrats on the committee would not meet Waters' eyes. Before we proceed to the vote on referral, Bongino said, I have one more piece of information to share. He pulled out a document with an FBI letterhead. Your daughter Karen has been cooperating with federal investigators for 4 months. Waters went completely still, the color draining from her face. She provided the internal emails, the bank records, the communications showing you personally directed the inflated payments. Everything I have presented today about the family business, most of it came from her. You are lying. Waters' voice was barely a whisper. She signed a cooperation agreement in March, he said, holding up the document. Karen Waters' signature was clearly visible at the bottom. Your own daughter, Congresswoman. She decided that federal prison was not worth protecting you anymore. She is facing potential charges for money laundering, tax evasion, and wire fraud. Cooperation was her only path forward. Waters stared at the signature, her daughter's handwriting, the child she had brought into the family business. Karen wouldn't. She couldn't. She did. Bongino confirmed. She provided 4 years of emails, bank statements, text messages. She told investigators everything. How the payments worked, how the invoices were inflated, how you personally approved every transaction. He set the cooperation agreement down. The people you trusted are turning on you, Congresswoman. Your daughter already has. The question is, who is next? A committee staffer handed a paper to the ranking Democratic member. She read it, closed her eyes briefly, then spoke. I have a statement to read into the record from the Congressional Black Caucus. Waters turned sharply. The CBC, her people, her base, the organization she had helped build over 3 decades. The ranking member read carefully. While the Congressional Black Caucus respects Representative Waters' decades of service, the evidence presented today raises serious questions that require thorough and independent investigation. The caucus cannot and will not obstruct legitimate oversight of potential misconduct. We urge our colleague to cooperate fully with investigators. Waters looked like she had been slapped. After everything I have done for them, everything I built, everything I sacrificed, they are not protecting you anymore, Congresswoman. Bongino's voice was almost gentle. No one is. Senator Warnock, a Democrat, cleared his throat. I have to say, after what I have seen today, the evidence about the payments to family members, the bank bailout, the lifestyle compared to the district conditions, I believe a referral to the Justice Department is appropriate and necessary. Senator Klobuchar nodded. I concur. These questions deserve answers that only a proper investigation can provide. One by one, Democrats on the committee signaled their support for the investigation. Not all of them, but enough. Waters attempted one final defense. This is a lynching. Her voice shook. A political lynching of a black woman who dared to speak truth to power. You will not silence me. You will not destroy what I have built. I have given my life to Congresswoman. Bongino's voice cut through. Your daughter is not white. Your former supporters in the CBC are not Republicans. The evidence is not racist. The donations from Rosa Martinez are not a conspiracy. He looked at her steadily. You are not being lynched. You are being held accountable. For the first time in 32 years, someone is finally reclaiming the time you stole from your constituents. The chairman called for the vote. All those in favor of referring this matter to the Department of Justice for criminal investigation? The votes came in, 14-7. Bipartisan, decisive, Waters watched each vote land like a physical blow. Republicans, as expected, but also Democrats, members of her own party, people who had sat beside her for years. The motion carries. This committee will prepare a formal referral to the Department of Justice for investigation of campaign finance violations, self-dealing, potential bank fraud, and abuse of office. The chairman looked at Waters. Representative Waters, you are advised to retain legal counsel. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel fell. Waters sat motionless for a long moment. At 84 years old, the effort of standing was visible. Her legs trembled. Her hands shook. She had walked into this room a titan. 32 years of power, feared by colleagues, celebrated by supporters, untouchable. She walked out, diminished, old, alone. Her daughter had betrayed her. Her caucus had abandoned her. Her legacy was in ruins. There was no reclaiming her time. Now, her time had finally run out. The footage spread across the internet like wildfire. Within an hour, the clips were everywhere. Waters screaming about lynching. The moment the CBC statement was read, the revelation about Karen's cooperation, her final broken walk out of the chamber. Within 2 hours, Profiteer of Poverty was trending nationally. Cable networks ran continuous coverage. Political analysts who had spent decades calling her an icon struggled to find words. Within 3 hours, protesters gathered outside her Hancock Park mansion. Not supporters, but former constituents demanding answers. In Watts, in Willowbrook, in the neighborhoods Maxine Waters had claimed to represent for 3 decades, people gathered around televisions in barber shops and churches and community centers. The reactions were not what many expected. Dorothy Williams sat in her small apartment, watching the news coverage with the receipt for 15 years of donations still clutched in her hand. "I knew something was wrong," she said quietly. "I think I always knew, but I wanted to believe. I needed to believe that someone was fighting for us." She tore the receipt slowly into pieces. "I was a fool. We were all fools." In South Los Angeles, Marcus Johnson stood on the same broken sidewalk where he had given his video testimony. 32 years, he said to the reporters who found him. "My whole life, basically. And she was getting rich the entire time. Getting rich off our votes, off our pain, off our hope." He kicked at the crumbling concrete. "You know what the worst part is? We will probably elect someone just like her. Because that is how it works. That is how it always works." At a community center in Compton, a group of older women who had been Waters' most reliable supporters sat in stunned silence watching the replays. "I defended her," one of them said, "for years, against everyone. I called them racists for criticizing her. I called them liars." She shook her head. "I was wrong. I was so wrong." That evening, Dan Bongino sat in his car outside the Capitol, engine off, watching the sunset through the windshield. He thought about Maxine Waters walking into that hearing room, the arrogance, the contempt, the absolute certainty that her 32 years of power made her untouchable. He thought about the people in her district. Dorothy Williams with her 15 years of donations, Marcus Johnson with his 3 generations of betrayed trust, the children who had grown up poor while their representative got rich. "Reclaiming my time," that was her catchphrase, her brand, the words she used to silence anyone who challenged her. But it was never her time to reclaim, it was theirs. Her constituents' time, their hopes, their futures, their $25 donations, scraped together from nothing. She had stolen all of it, and finally, someone had taken it back. His phone buzzed, a text from his wife. "How are you feeling?" He thought for a long moment before responding, "Like I did my job. Like someone finally held one of these people accountable. But mostly, like this is just one person out of hundreds who do the same thing." Her reply came quickly, "One at a time. That is how it works." He started the car and headed home. Tomorrow, there would be more investigations, more hearings, more politicians who had betrayed their oaths, and the people who trusted them. The work never ended. But tonight, at least there was some justice, small and incomplete, but real. 2 weeks later, Maxine Waters announced her retirement from Congress. effective immediately. The statement cited health concerns and a desire to spend time with family. It did not mention the investigation. It did not acknowledge wrongdoing. It did not apologize to Dorothy Williams or Marcus Johnson or the thousands of other constituents who had trusted her with their votes and their money and their hopes. The investigation continued. Grand juries convened. Subpoenas were issued. Karen Waters' cooperation proved extensive and damaging. In the 43rd District of California, a special election was announced to fill the vacant seat. New candidates emerged, some promising the same things Waters had promised, some promising something different. Dorothy Williams, 78 years old, registered to vote in the special election. It would be her first time voting for someone other than Maxine Waters in 3 decades. "Maybe this one will be different," she said without much hope. "Maybe this one will actually fight for us." She paused. "Or maybe they will just be another one like her, getting rich while we stay poor, making speeches while nothing changes." She shrugged. "But I am going to vote anyway, because that is all we have got. That is all we have ever had." Outside, the streets of Watts looked the same as they had for 32 years. Broken sidewalks, struggling businesses, families doubling up in apartments because they could not afford rent. The poverty remained, the problems persisted, but the woman who had gotten rich from it all was finally gone. And for the first time in 3 decades, there was at least the possibility of something different, something better, something real. Time, finally, that actually belonged to them.